What's up, what's happening, what is going on, cantaloupes? Yeah, I just said that. Most years, it's pretty difficult to complain about any potential Heisman Trophy snubs. The voters get it right far more often than not, especially over the past decade or so. But that's not always the case. There have been some deserving dudes who were snubbed in favor of a much less deserving player. So let's dive into it and take a look at the 12 biggest Heisman Trophy snubs of all time. Number 12, Herschel Walker, 1980. Walker won the Heisman in 1982. The year before, he was runner-up to Southern Cal running back Marcus Allen. The year before that, in 1980, it is a completely different story than we need to talk about now. In his freshman year, Walker picked up a whopping 1,616 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, averaging an impressive 5.9 yards per carry. He also added several receptions for 70 receiving yards. Walker led the Georgia Bulldogs to a perfect 12-0 record, and they defeated Notre Dame by a final score of 17-10 in the Super Bowl. However, Walker would lose the Heisman Trophy to South Carolina running back George Rogers, who tallied 1,781 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. It should be noted that Rogers had 23 more carries than Walker on the year as well. Yes, Walker at least won the Heisman 2 years later, but he probably deserved it more than Rogers in 1980, though it was really close. A closer look at the numbers, however, and it's clear that Walker deserved this one just a bit more. Number 11, Tommie Frazier, 1995. Frazier endured 3 frustrating years at Nebraska before finally breaking out in 95. The Cornhuskers signal caller tossed 1,362 passing yards and 17 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. Frazier also racked up a whopping 604 rushing yards and a total of 14 rushing touchdowns. Nebraska finished with a perfect 12-0 record, defeating Florida 62-24 in the Fiesta Bowl. However, Frazier finished second in Heisman Trophy voting behind Eddie George, the Ohio State running back who finished with 1,927 rushing yards and 24 touchdowns, plus 47 receptions for 417 yards. Yes, George was a pretty damn good player, but we just feel like this one should have gone to Frazier, who had one of the most impressive seasons for a dual-threat quarterback in college football history. Number 10, LaDainian Tomlinson, 2000. The future Chargers legend and Pro Football Hall of Famer was one of the most dominant running backs in NCAA history during his tenure at Texas Christian. In all, Tomlinson compiled 5,387 yards and 56 touchdowns in his 4 years of college football. Tomlinson had a senior year for the ages in 2000. That year he rushed for 2,158 yards and 22 touchdowns. The Horned Frogs finished with a 10-2 record before losing to Southern Mississippi in the Mobile, Alabama Bowl. That should have been enough for LT to win the Heisman, having crossed the 2,000-yard mark. But amazingly, he didn't even get the nomination. Florida State quarterback Chris Weinke won the 2000 Heisman Trophy throwing for 4,167 yards and 33 touchdowns against 11 interceptions. Number 9, Christian McCaffrey, 2015. The son of former Broncos star Ed McCaffrey has more than lived up to the hype at the NFL level. Sure, Lamar Jackson will prevent him from earning MVP honors in 2019, but based on what we've seen, there's little reason to doubt McCaffrey's chances of taking home the award at some point in his career. Unfortunately for McCaffrey, one award he will never be able to take home is the Heisman Trophy, even though he more than deserved it. In 2015, McCaffrey rushed for 2,019 yards and 8 touchdowns. He also broke the single-season record for most all-purpose yards with 3,864. This know-it-all workhorse should have ran away with the award. Instead, McCaffrey finished second in voting, as the Heisman ended up going to Alabama Crimson Tide running back Derrick Henry. The Titans star earned the award after compiling 2,219 yards and a whopping 28 touchdowns. The Crimson Tide also went on to win the national championship. Henry was then selected in the second round of the 2016 draft by Tennessee, and he too has grown into one of the game's premier running backs along with McCaffrey. Number 8, Peyton Manning, 1997. The Sheriff crafted quite a career in the NFL, finishing with 5 MVP awards and 2 Super Bowl championships. He retired as the NFL's all-time leader in passing yards and passing touchdowns, though they've since been broken. Manning accomplished absolutely everything he could dream of at the NFL level, but he never managed to come away with that elusive Heisman Trophy at the college level. The closest he came was in 97, finishing second in voting behind Michigan quarterback Charles Woodson. Now Woodson had a season for the ages. He had 283 punt return yards and 1 touchdown. He also played receiver and recorded 231 receiving yards. But Woodson did all of his damage as a defensive back, racking up 7 interceptions. Credit Woodson for a jaw-dropping season that saw him take away other major honors. such as the Jim Thorpe and Bronco Nagurski awards. But it was also hard to overlook Manning's magnificent season. He completed just 60.2% of his passes for 3,819 yards and 36 touchdowns, against just 11 interceptions for the Tennessee Volunteers. Manning led the team to an 11-2 record, though they fell to the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the Orange Bowl. We just feel like Manning deserves that Heisman Trophy award a little bit more, but the voters ultimately disagreed. Manning wound up being selected first overall by the Indianapolis Colts in '98, while Woodson went off to the Oakland Raiders at number 4 overall. Both enjoyed Hall of Fame careers, and they each came away with championship rings. Number 7, Larry Fitzgerald, 2003. The Arizona Cardinals legend was always going to be great, but this great? Yeah, most football fans and pundits couldn't have projected nearly 20 years of dominance from Fitz. In his sophomore year for the Pittsburgh Panthers, Fitzgerald recorded 92 receptions for 1,672 yards and 22 touchdowns. That wasn't enough to win the Heisman Trophy, however. Instead, it went to Oklahoma quarterback Jason White, who threw for 3,846 yards and 40 touchdowns against 10 interceptions. Those are good numbers, but it's hard to argue that his season was simply better than Fitzgerald's. This just felt like another instance of quarterback bias from Heisman voters. We've seen very few wideouts put up a season like Fitzgerald did in 2003, whereas many quarterbacks have posted similar numbers to White's Heisman winning campaign. Number 6, Adrian Peterson, 2004. The future NFL MVP and perennial Pro Bowler started out with a bang in his first year of college with the Oklahoma Sooners. Peterson rushed for a whopping 1,925 yards and 15 touchdowns, leading the team to a 12-1 record before they fell to USC in the Orange Bowl. However, Peterson only finished second in Heisman Trophy voting, losing out to USC quarterback Matt Leinart. The latter completed 65.3% of his passes for 3,322 yards and 33 touchdowns against 6 interceptions. Good numbers for Leinart. Like we said earlier, you see lots of quarterbacks posting those kind of stats. Peterson nearly crossed the 2,000-yard mark in his first season. Well, if there's a consolation of any kind, Peterson wound up having a far better NFL career. He became a game-changing world-class talent for the Minnesota Vikings, while injuries and inconsistent play led to a disappointing NFL career for Leinart. But man, we still can't help but wonder, how did Peterson not win the Heisman that year? Number 5, Jim Brown, 1956. Ooh, we're going back in time here, baby. Why is Brown so high on this list? Well, not only was his 1956 season a dominant one, but the eventual winner didn't exactly have a good season either. Notre Dame quarterback Paul Hornung, that is such a 1956 name, was named the Heisman Trophy winner, even though he only completed 53.2% of his passes for 917 yards and 3 touchdowns, against 13 interceptions. I guess voters were impressed by his 420 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. Not only was Jim Brown snubbed, but he didn't even earn a nomination. The Syracuse product rushed for 986 yards and 13 touchdowns. He also recorded 5 receptions for 56 yards and a touchdown. Tommy McDonald and John Majors were the other 2 finalists, but Brown was more productive than both of them. The fact that he wasn't even named a finalist forced us to place him as high as the number 5 spot on this list. Number 4, O.J. Simpson, 1967. It's worth noting that Simpson won the Heisman Trophy in 1968, but the guy simply should have 2 Heismans on his resume. That's because the juice was snubbed big time in 1967, and allow us to explain. The USC star rushed for 1,543 yards and 13 touchdowns, averaging 5.3 yards per carry, and he added 10 receptions for 109 yards. But Simpson was actually the runner-up to UCLA quarterback Gary Beeben. Beeben only completed 55.8% of his passes for 1,359 yards, and he had just 8 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. Now, quarterbacks didn't put up big numbers during those days, but even those weren't exactly spectacular for the time. All things considered, Simpson should have won it. So, yeah. Number 3, Marshall Faulk, 1992. The San Diego State product was virtually unstoppable during his 3 years of college. Faulk had a season for the ages in 1992 where he compiled 1,630 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, averaging 6.2 yards per carry. Faulk also added 18 receptions for 128 yards, though the team struggled with a mere 5-5-1 record. Perhaps the struggles of San Diego State led to Faulk getting strongly overlooked when it came to Heisman Trophy winning. Faulk finished second behind Miami, Florida quarterback Gino Torretta, who posted very good but not exactly jaw-dropping numbers. So what were you thinking, voters? Torretta completed 56.7% of his passes for 3,060 yards and 19 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. But hey, Faulk still carved out quite the career upon turning pro. He won 3 straight Offensive Player of the Year awards from '99 to '01, while winning the 2000 MVP award. He was also instrumental in leading the St. Louis Rams to a Super Bowl 34 championship. And did we mention that he's enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Even without a Heisman, we'd say Falk had a near flawless football career. Number 2, Chuck Muncie, 1975. This one doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to us. This California running back finished second in Heisman voting to fellow running back and Ohio State product Archie Griffin. This is despite the fact that Chuck finished with 1,460 yards and 13 touchdowns, compared to Griffin's 1,450 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Griffin played one more game and carried the ball 34 more times. Chuck crushed Griffin in the receiving game too, with 39 receptions for 392 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Griffin, on the other hand, only had 14 receptions for 170 yards and a touchdown. Really, it's beyond us how this award didn't go to Chuck, who also averaged 6.4 yards per carry compared to Griffin's 5.5. I really don't know what the voters were thinking in 75, but someone must have paid him off or something. Number 1, Vince Young, 2005. What a season it was for the Texas Longhorn signal caller. Vince Young was impossible to stop during his third and final year of college. He compiled 3,036 passing yards and 26 touchdowns while rushing for a whopping 1,050 yards and 12 touchdowns. Indeed, this man could not be stopped. Young led the Longhorns to a perfect 13-0 record, and they defeated USC in the thrilling 2005 National Championship game. Everything Young did was near perfect that year. If only he had the Heisman Trophy to top it off. Instead, Young lost to USC running back Reggie Bush, who rushed for 1,740 yards and 16 touchdowns while adding 37 receptions for 478 yards. Bush, however, had to forfeit the Heisman in 2010 after it was revealed that he had received improper benefits during his college days. Even before the scandal came to light, it was obvious and clear that Young was the better player. The man was totally robbed of the Heisman. If the voters had just given in to the more deserving Young in the first place, they would have never had to deal with the embarrassment or Bush forfeiting the award. Live and learn, my friends. Live and learn. What other Heisman Trophy snubs should we have included on our list? Join me in the comment section below. Make sure to follow myself and TPS on social media. We post great content all the time. TikTok, baby. I TikTok all the time. What's up, TikTok? Go follow me on TikTok. My recent video blew up, actually, so go check that out. It was a really funny video. It has to do with Star Wars, and you'll definitely laugh, because a lot of other people did. So, yeah, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all social medias. Go find us. Go do it. Like this video if you liked it. It takes one click. Subscribe to TPS, because we post videos every single day. Every day is a new video. Subscribe. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jason Biondo. I'll see you next time.
My knee.